Hello and welcome. I'm Manealge Tedemet, Senior Product Manager at Tiled, member of 2021 Women in Product Content Selection Committee, and Women in Product Chapter Lead at San Diego. Welcome to the Spotlight on Skills stage. Before we get started, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors without whom this event would not be possible. I invite you all to be present and turn off any notifications. During this session, Prioritization and Skills, Developing Your Product Vision and Strategy, we have two wonderful speakers. First on stage, we have Meg Quintero. Meg is a product leader who loves solving problems at the intersection of tech and operations. She is currently a product lead at Rivian, leading the digital build-out of the commercial sales through delivery experience for fleet customers. She will be sharing her experience and expertise with you during her presentation, Becoming a Product Visionary. Please join me in welcoming Meg to our stage.
Hi everyone, my name is Meg Quintero and I'm a product lead at Rivian. In my years as a PM, I've had the opportunity to work on a wide range of products, teams, and companies. And as a product manager, I love that I not only get paid to think and dream about the possibilities of the future, but I also get to execute on this vision and make it a reality. As such, product vision and strategy are among my favorite parts of the job, which is great because I've learned throughout my PM journey just how crucial it is to be able to paint a compelling and high-impact vision and strategy for my products. Without a clear North Star, the impact you'll have on your customers and the business will be limited. For me, this was a crucial skill set required to advance and grow into a senior product leader. However, I wasn't always great at it. While I've successfully pitched new product and business lines, I've also had my share of product vision docs that sat on the shelf collecting dust. So what makes for a compelling vision? A solid vision must be customer-oriented, well-communicated, realistic, impactful, strategically planned, and properly scoped. And it must have all 6 of these components to bring the most impact. In your journey to becoming a product visionary, you may encounter roadblocks or fail to effectively translate your vision into a reality. In this talk, I will walk through some common pitfalls that I've experienced both firsthand and through those that I manage and mentor. I will also provide some next steps to get started and begin growing this muscle. First, the most important component of a solid vision, the customer. A solid vision unlocks new possibilities for your customer or solves a problem currently uncracked by the market. It's typically backed by dozens of customer interviews and extensive market research. So how do you know if your vision is not customer-oriented? Well, start by answering these questions. Who will use or buy this product? Being able to clearly articulate the target audience is the first step. What does this person care about? What are their hopes, dreams, and aspirations? In a B2B context, how does this person get evaluated by their organization? What does success look like for them? What is getting in the customer's way of reaching their goals? What are the different challenges they face? What is hard about their situation or job role? Next, how does your product help the customer reach their goals? Where does it come into play? A product solution without a matching problem is a hammer in search of a nail. What are they currently doing to solve their problem? How is your solution better or different from what is currently in the market? Does it save them time or money or maybe both? Last, what will be the outcome or feeling your product will bring? Does it allow your customer to keep up with their competitors? For consumers, is it a net new way of experiencing the world, or does it help them achieve their hopes and dreams? In summary, if your concept is not exciting to your current or prospective customers, it will fall flat, both for your internal stakeholders who need to sign off, and more importantly, for the customer. Next, a pitfall that I most struggled with when your vision is poorly communicated. Back to my time as a junior product manager at Uber, I very clearly remember the time my manager told me during one of our quarterly performance check-ins, "You have no product vision." I was devastated. After months of prioritizing this competency and multiple jam sessions with my team on the future of our product, I thought I had really grown this muscle. So I went to a peer I trusted in search of advice. I remember he was very shocked by the feedback. He told me that product vision was actually a superpower of mine and that I had in fact been a source of inspiration for him. That feedback was, of course, motivating, but rather in that conversation, my peer helped me realize that my skill gap was not in product vision, but rather in communication. I had failed to communicate my vision in a way that resonated with my manager. It's not enough to just have a vision. You must also be able to communicate it to a wide range of audiences and stakeholders and influence their thinking. For example, your manager, a product leader, like all product people, is being evaluated by the impact they bring. They want to know that this bet, among all other things they could be doing, is the right bet to achieve the org's goals. Your manager wants to see a direct link between your idea and an estimated impact on your team's OKRs, and more importantly, why you think it will have this impact. Similarly, your engineering team wants to build big and exciting launches. They want to solve challenging technical problems and be able to point to a TechCrunch article and say, I built that. Getting them on board involves painting an exciting North Star, outlining the technical challenges that will need to be overcome, and highlighting potential differentiators. Your data science peer wants to know where you got your data and how you used it to draw this conclusion. They want you to clearly outline what is known and what is still a hypothesis that needs to be proven out, and how you're going to prove it out. Your finance team wants to know the impact to the bottom line. What are the additional costs that this product bet will introduce? What quantity of new customer billings can be unlocked? What is the predicted pricing strategy? And what is the margin or take rate going to be? Your marketing and sales team will want to know how this product impacts the current positioning in the market and the value proposition to the customer. Can the sales team now make a promise that was blocking current deal flow? Can the product marketing manager now be empowered to launch a new set of messaging that will improve the company's relevance or positioning in the market? What is the story behind your vision? And how can making it a reality lead to more eyeballs, more customers, and more usage? As a product manager, you work with almost every single discipline in your company. With everything you do, it's crucial to effectively speak others' languages and communicate any decision you make. With product bets, you are taking on the unknown and using company resources. It's risky. For this reason, communicating your vision to a wide variety of stakeholders is the first step to making it a reality. On to the next pitfall. Is your vision unrealistic? A solid vision is rooted in a mix of qualitative and quantitative data. It may be contingent on a set of hypotheses or involve a number of bold bets. However, it must be grounded in reality and feasible to accomplish. As you start any vision exercise, catalog your data, the data type, where it comes from, what it tells you, and what it doesn't tell you, and then how you're going to translate it into your intended strategy. Next, break out the known and the unknown. Within your known insights, you should have multiple, diverse, trustworthy, and statistically significant data sources that support this being a foundation for your strategy. If you claim the majority of people in the US own a yacht, and your source is a survey of 5 people milling about the marina, then this is not a solid known insight. Similarly, your insights must be descriptive and specific. Claiming that everyone loves broccoli is a hyperbole and not helpful. Rather, focus on defining the who, the where, and the what. For example, the insight of electrical vehicle owners in the US are more likely to buy an EV for their next purchase than a traditional gas-burning vehicle is specific about the who, EV owners, the where, the United States, and the what are more likely to buy an EV. Now that you've cataloged the known, you must identify your unknowns. What are the open questions that are currently unanswered and need to be validated? What is your current hypothesis for these answers to the questions, and how are they relevant to your strategic proposal? More explicitly, what must be true for your vision and strategy to be successful? Following the previous example, an unknown could be, what is it that makes EV owners buy their next vehicle? And the hypothesis could be, EV owners are most likely to buy their next EV when a product with greater range is introduced, with the corresponding strategy of build an EV with greater range. This is a hypothesis that is currently untested and unknown. The strategy will fall flat if an EV is introduced with greater range, but EV owners don't actually make a purchase. Once you know your knowns and unknowns, now comes the hard work of crafting a plan for how you will turn your unknowns into knowns. You must have a plan to test these hypotheses and introduce checkpoints along the way as you execute your strategy. Do this, and your vision will be firmly rooted in reality. In contrast to the previous pitfall, sometimes a vision falls flat because it's too small. Your product vision must have a significant impact on your customers and business. It must also be inspiring enough to get your team excited about its potential and the level of resourcing it requires. For example, let's say your product is relatively young and you have a top-line funnel of 1,000 prospective customers with 50% converting into actual customers, and each customer accounts for $100 in annual revenue. You've pitched a product improvement that will take the engineering team about a year and will streamline the sign-up flow and convert customers at a rate of 75%. While increasing your number of customers from 500 to 750 and growing revenue from 50K to 75K certainly isn't nothing to sneeze at, this isn't a particularly exciting impact, especially considering the investment required to get there. So what would be a big enough impact? Well, here are a few options. You could introduce a net new capability that broadens your total addressable market and pitch a go-to-market that introduces 10x the traffic into your top-line funnel. You now have 5,000 customers and $500,000 in revenue. Or you could double down on your current customer base and pitch a sticky new feature that grows the per account revenue to 1,000 in annual revenue, which will also get you to $500,000 and probably improve your retention rate as well. Or you could do a combination of all three, a new capability, a stickier set of features, and a streamlined sign-up flow, leading to an even larger impact. A solid vision must be meaningfully impactful to important customer and business metrics. Also, be sure that the impact is simply exciting enough to be talking about. To increase your customer base, are you pitching to make usability improvements to its sign-up flow? Which is something definitely worth doing, but it's more of a table stakes initiative. Or are you going after a currently under-targeted customer base in a way that will set you apart from your competitors and generate excitement and buzz? Will this impact be something you look back on and will be proud to point to and say, I worked on that? Are you so excited about the potential of the idea that you're constantly thinking about your project? For a truly impactful vision, the answers to these questions must be a strong yes. On a similar note, you can have the most inspiring vision, but it won't ever see the light of day unless it's coupled with a roadmap of key deliverables and milestones to reach your North Star. If you're pitching a hotel chain on Mars, you better have a realistic and actionable roadmap of steps on how to get there. In the absence of this, you are presenting a dream, not a vision. I've seen so many visions that are merely a pie-in-the-sky idea for what the future could look like, not a true strategy for delivering meaningful customer experiences. To avoid this pitfall, ask yourself the following questions. What is the time frame for this vision? Is that a reasonable time frame to be projected out based on the maturity of my product, the market, technology, and my resourcing? Per my earlier example, a 3-year product vision of hotels on Mars is making one too many leaps in terms of the technological capabilities in the currently non-existent market of consumer space travel. Next, what does progress in the next year look like? Can the team make meaningful actions to either make stepwise progress or lay the foundation for the strategy? For an on-demand hotel chain in Antarctica, a meaningful step could be establishing the housing infrastructure itself and forming partnerships with top airlines. You might not have visitors checking in, but you're getting closer to launch. Next, what are the smaller customer-facing milestones? Must they all be launched at once? Or is there a ramp-up of functionality or market addressability? Can you start small with a set of reference customers while you work to build the capabilities needed to scale? Using the Antarctica example, you could launch a small pilot with the scientists currently living in Antarctica to test the in-hotel experience while you work out the transportation logistics of getting an increased volume of people to the continent. What is the truly minimal, lovable product? What must be available to have a successful and delightful experience? Be sure to think this one over closely. Launch too soon, and you could have a fire festival situation on your hands. Next, what are the key pivotal moments along the way? Do you have a splashy launch as part of your strategy, where you begin to generate awareness while you build up the sign-up flows? Do you have strategic partners or channels that you could establish along the way? Could you partner with the cruise ship company to pilot your dining facilities with daily cruise passengers while you stand up the hotel rooms? Last, what are the resources needed? And who are the people that must come together to make this a reality? Pitching your Antarctica hotel idea to a group of 10 software engineers probably isn't going to get you very far. Be sure to have thought through all of the financial, human, and social capital involved to strategically execute your vision. Now to the last pitfall, one that is crucial, especially as you begin your journey of becoming a strategic product visionary: scope. As you are growing this skill set, it's important to start by defining a vision for a scoped area of ownership, ideally with predefined strategic objectives from your leadership. Going too broad or too narrow will not set you up for success. In an ideal world, your manager has already defined the overall strategy for your product team and has clearly structured your role based on a leg of the customer journey or a set of features or problems to solve. If this is the case, start your efforts by thinking about how your area supports that strategy. Put another way, if your team were to not invest in anything in the next 1 to 2 years, what would happen? Let's say you own the top line funnel for customer signups in a product whose high-level strategy is to convert users into paid subscription tiers. If your team were to go on a hiatus, your product line may not reach its number of new users. Fewer users means fewer paying customers. While this example is a bit simplistic, it's a good picture of a clearly defined scope, an interconnected set of activities and strategic goals. It's the ideal. However, the reality is we don't live in an ideal world. So what do you do if you don't have a clearly scoped area? Or even worse, if the product area doesn't have a defined strategy? Well, you influence. For folks in this situation, I recommend playing a more active leadership role and working with your manager and your peers to get to a well-defined strategy. This isn't easy, but in the absence of this, your greater team will be directionless, meaning no matter how awesome your strategy is, the impact is going to be diluted if not everyone is rowing in the same direction. Also, in the absence of strategic alignment across your product, your area could get defunded or randomized if not everyone is on the same page about how your team brings value to the business and the individual strategic actions you're taking to have that impact. If you find yourself in this situation, I recommend starting with your manager. Gain a better understanding of their opinion on the team strategy. Ask them how they view the team in the context of the greater org. What is the leading metric they want to focus on? How does the team uniquely bring value compared to peer teams in the organization? What do they see as the North Star of the team? What is their point of view over the next steps or strategy to achieve this vision? Next, seek guidance on your specific area and how it impacts their vision. How are they thinking about the different teams? For each product squad, ask them to identify how the team plays into the greater picture. What are the core sets of problems your manager deems to be the most important for your squad to solve and why? What are the boundaries of your area and where is there overlap across your peers? How does your manager see the different PMs on your team coming together to achieve this vision? From here, you can have a productive brainstorm over your area and its leading metric. I recommend scheduling a follow-up to pitch a few ideas to gain their feedback as well as brainstorm strategic activities that must happen to execute on your vision. This will spark an important conversation that will not only allow you to get constructive feedback on your vision, but ensure you and your manager are on the same page on several crucial topics. 1, your team's North Star. 2, your role in that vision. And 3, what success for your area looks like. Once you've gained alignment with your manager, go to your peers. Ask them similar questions and what their vision is for respective areas. Share your early thinking and get feedback. Ask how your areas can work together to gain synergies and complement each other. After all, you are a team focused on solving overlapping problems for the same set of customers. Your peers are a crucial stakeholder, and joining forces will have a multiplicative effect. To close out on this topic, be sure to kick off your efforts with a deep understanding of your team's greater strategy and how you fit into the bigger picture. Doing this will not only ensure you don't end up trying to boil the ocean, but will also help you gain alignment with a very, very important set of stakeholders, your manager and your peers. To wrap up, product vision and strategy is a crucial skill with many challenges and potential pitfalls like the 6 we walked through today. Growing this muscle is difficult, but you only get good at it by doing. So, where do you go from now? Here are some suggestions. Find tools and frameworks you like for both formulating and communicating your strategy. Strategic planning and marketing frameworks, such as Porter's 5 Forces or the 4 Ps, are not great at communicating a vision, but can be great intermediate tools to formulate your thinking. For communicating a vision, I personally love the PRFAQ. It's a great format for getting your audience to zoom out and see the potential of the product and how it can impact the business. And more importantly, it works backwards from the customer, with the customer at the center of the positioning and vision painting. Next, leverage your team and stakeholders to gain alignment and communicate your vision. For example, some pitches are better conveyed visually. With this, you could leverage your design team to create storyboards and prototypes. This not only results in an excellent end artifact, but it brings your team along in the formation of the vision, which helps you gain alignment, but also brings in different perspectives. Find a mentor who is great at this. Ideally, someone in your organization who can give you feedback on internal docs and who has the greater organizational context. However, if this isn't possible, find someone in your network who can give you feedback on your high-level thinking and approach. Next, to sharpen your toolset, practice on an existing product that you admire. Back into how this vision might have been originally pitched and presented. You can find many great resources online that show original pitch decks for beloved products like Uber Cab. These can be a great source of inspiration, especially since you now know how the vision and strategy actually played out. Then take a stab at your own area. Use my pitfalls model to gut check your thinking and ensure success. Get feedback and start sharing with safe audiences such as your peers or cross-functional stakeholders. Keep iterating and incorporating new points of view and data sources. Last, keep it up to date. With vision and strategy work, you are never done. The industry is constantly changing, your customers are changing, and new and existing competitors can evolve over time. Be sure to revisit your vision and strategy at least monthly, especially as you begin to launch strategic milestones or experiments. Ensure these learnings get back into your North Star. Thank you so much for attending my talk. I hope you've enjoyed hearing more about some of my past learnings and pitfalls I've encountered. If you found this to be a helpful model in your journey to becoming a product visionary, be sure to check out the Pitfalls Guide I've created with some helpful questions to guide your thinking. Thank you, and I wish you the best of luck, and I can't wait to see the amazing products you'll build.
Thank you, Meg. Next up, we have Maggie Crowley. Maggie is a Senior Director of Product at Drift, where she works on products for marketers and is the host of Build Podcast, which focuses on how to build products better. She's also an Olympian and has an MBA from Harvard Business School. Join me in welcoming Maggie to our stage for her presentation, How to Make Bets and Develop the Real Hard Skills.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie, Senior Director of Product at Drift. Today, I'm going to tell you a story about an acquisition, a launch, and really a journey that a team of women product managers went on. In 2018, we acquired a small company with amazing technology. Think patented conversational AI. What they needed was a go-to-market machine, which is exactly what we had at Drift. And my job was to run the product team for the acquisition and help make it into a product that we could sell. Like all teams who are embarking on a new journey, we were excited, motivated. We had so much conviction about the product, we could just taste the success. But like every single roadmap and plan I've ever seen, it did not go as expected. We started this journey with a roadmap that looked something like this: a smooth launch, adding new features, expanding with a second product or use case, adding even more features, just growing like crazy and making a ton of money along the way. But the second our product hit reality, our roadmap turned into something more like this. So, what do you do when reality doesn't cooperate and your carefully laid plans fall apart basically immediately? And here's where you're probably expecting me to give you a crisp summary of what the root cause of all this change was that we ran into, and how we used our magical hard skills to solve for it, and how in the end we triumphed with superior math and the development of some sophisticated insight that resulted in a perfect framework that you too can use to solve everything that ails you. But reality is never that simple. And if you're lucky, these stories are also never done. If we're good, our products are still out there working, so there's almost never a clean way to put a bow on the story of a product. Instead, navigating reality and being resilient when things don't go as planned, and figuring out how to make the right bets at each point in a journey like this one are all part of the tool set that you need to be an effective product manager and product leader. So today, instead of that simple, watered down story, I'm going to share 3 hurdles we faced bringing this new product to market, the lessons we learned with each hurdle, and how to know whether you're in a similar situation and the tools you could use to solve for it. And my hope is that you take away just one idea, one approach, or one moment of feeling like you're not alone out there as I take you through our story. So let's dive in. Arguably, the first hurdle we ran into after launching publicly was how to sell the product to a wider group of customers than we'd had in our early access program. So our first group of customers were really innovators, if you think about the crossing the chasm curve. And what worked for them, or the amount of selling we had to do, was different than it turns out what we needed to do for the next group, of course, the early adopters. And the product we were selling was really a chatbot powered by AI instead of powered by a handwritten decision tree. So we needed to get our customers to move from designing their buyer experience themselves to trusting our AI to talk to their buyers for them, sort of like taking their hands off the wheel and letting AI drive the car while their baby's in the back. And we had to do this with a group that, of course, wasn't already one of our super happy existing customers that trusted us a ton. We also had to figure out how to get the sales team comfortable selling something that was much more technically complex than anything they'd sold for us in the past. Of course, we knew all of this before we launched, so the team was trained, but what we didn't anticipate was how the way each salesperson would talk about the product would influence the way that customers perceived how it would work. And with something as complex as AI, that showed up in a lot of surprising and tricky ways. We had a customer who thought that the bot would create its own language, like it was really independent, and was extremely nervous about testing that and letting it go live until we figured out that that's the assumption that they had. We also had a customer interpret the potential impact of our product in a way that wasn't totally right. And so we had to figure out how to drive probably double the result than we were prepared to create for them because they just misinterpreted how it would work. And admittedly, the product wasn't flying off the shelves in a way that we wanted or anticipated. So what I ended up doing was pitching in with a sales team for a month. Literally all I did was sell, so I could get a firsthand understanding of how those conversations went, what different customers cared about, what they got or understood, what questions they would ask, and most importantly, understand what was confusing or didn't resonate with them. While at the same time, the other PM on the team, she was looking at the post-sale process and basically acting as a customer success manager to figure out what was happening once they got onboarded. And what I learned is that sales really isn't a team that you can just provide material to. It's not just a step to be enabled. How your product is sold is part of the product experience. And to be successful, you need to design that exactly like you design the rest of your user experience. And the success of your product, in some respects, is going to hinge on those first impressions. And this is definitely not just a B2B thing. You think about how your user finds out about your product. Do those expectations that are set early on match what they'll see when they start using it? So some questions you can use to figure out if there's a break in how your customers understand your product from the beginning, and might be leading to some of the weirdness that you're seeing in the user expectations you have, are things like, what do your users or customers learn about your product during the sales process or when they're considering purchasing or signing up? Does that match the experience they get when they start using it? And do the outputs or outcomes they get match what they thought they would get when they bought or signed up? And of course, you're going to have to ask your users these questions to get the real answers. And if you get any no's, it's a really good sign that there's a break somewhere in that early experience that's going to cause trouble with those users from the start. And the tool you can use here is just our old standard user journey map, but the change would be to include the steps that happen before your user gets into your product, to flesh out those steps in detail and consider them really carefully. This is also when a good relationship with product marketing is going to come in really handy. So that was lesson 1. Let's fast forward a bit and get to the second lesson. So at this point, we're post-launch, things are cruising along. As the person leading the team, I wanted to know how it was going. But of course, like any good product lead, I wanted to have data that I could look at that would prove whether things were going well, whether they were going wrong, and kind of what was going on. So of course, I built a dashboard that showed for every customer exactly what results they were getting from our new product, broken out sort of across the full funnel from start to finish, so I could see exactly where we were outperforming and where maybe we had gaps. I ran this thing every single week, and I had a really clear picture of how well the product worked. And of course, the results were amazing. I was so happy. We were crushing it exactly like we thought we would. So remember that roadmap in the first couple of slides, I really felt like we were starting to get over to where the rocket ship was going to take off. But then I started to hear rumblings from our customer team, and on the phone when I would talk to customers, they weren't as ecstatic as I thought they would be, given the results that I could see. I mean, I had these facts in front of my face. And it turns out, even though the product was working, the experience of it was frustrating and opaque to customers, and it just wasn't as high quality for their end users as we promised it would be. Again, this was an AI-powered chat experience. So part of that experience for the product is the quality of the conversations it would have with our customers' customers. And the data that I had painstakingly put together wasn't telling me the full story. Customers were not happy, even though we were making them more money. So, of course, I kept measuring those results because I wanted to make sure I could keep an eye on them. But I paired that with a qualitative investigation. So we spent a bunch of time talking to customers, specifically about their experience with the current product, rather than talking about maybe the next set of problems we could solve, which we would typically be doing as PMs. And the key that I also did, or the other thing that was really important, was that we spent a ton of time reading hundreds and hundreds of conversations by hand. So think about this like going through and replaying hundreds of runs of your product and recreating the experience that your users went through in order to understand and really feel what your users felt in that moment when they're using it. So the lesson here was that coming up with a way to measure and score how things are going is good. Of course, we should all do that. But never forget to check that against your actual customers. Data can hide all sorts of problems, and sometimes customers aren't happy even if they're getting more results. And the second part to that lesson is just never stop using your product yourself, even if you're perfect at pairing data with consistent qualitative feedback. The third piece that you have to keep in your workflow as a PM is experiencing the product as it is today, not just as it will be tomorrow in your sandbox environment or when you're looking at new designs or testing things out. So for this lesson, a couple of questions I would ask to see maybe if you're falling into a similar trap is something like, do you know how your product is performing across your user base? God had those numbers. How happy are your customers with it, really? Do you know? How do you know? And when was the last time you checked personally? And then the next question I would ask is something like, when was the last time you used the current version of your product? And I want to call out in particular, if you are a manager, this is especially critical because this is the thing that you're going to lose touch with first if you're not careful, because you're only going to be looking at designs and new ideas that your PMs are working on, and you're going to start to lose touch with the current reality of your product. And the tool outside of these questions that I would use here are just pretty simple on the surface, but it's a combination of, SQL or data analytics, knowing how to interview users, and of course, dogfooding your product. All right, so now for our third lesson, and this is definitely the hardest one. So we are staying close to our customers, we're reading those conversations, we're doing all these customer interviews, all that stuff we were doing in that last lesson. And in doing so, we created a really deep understanding of how well our product was working and where it needed to be improved. we built up all this conviction around the problem space because we had seen all this stuff up close ourselves for pretty much weeks at a time. But like every startup and probably company, regardless of size, the pressure for something new started to mount. So again, remember that perfect roadmap where everything was going swimmingly. We were adding new features, expanding to new use cases, and making more money. That's also what our stakeholders expected. And you'll recognize when you're in one of these situations, when you start to hear questions like, okay, what's next? Or that roadmap just isn't aggressive enough. Or even something like, oh, you're still working on that, when you're meeting with your stakeholders. And we were getting those questions, but we knew at this point in our story that if we moved on, we'd be switching focus before we figured out how to make our product as good as we believed it needed to be to deliver the level of quality we had to deliver to meet our customers' expectations. And the key here is that, and the real problem is that we knew, but our stakeholders didn't know. Or maybe even trickier, they had heard us say that we knew, but they didn't share the same conviction and belief that we did. So we had to figure out how to sell that direction to our leaders who just weren't as close to the problem. We had to figure out how to build their conviction to match ours. In the specific example, we had to convince them that betting on iterating on the current product was the right thing to do versus adding another feature or maybe expanding to a new use case like we had had in the roadmap. And this doesn't just apply to, defending against new. You can apply the same kind of thinking when it doesn't make sense to iterate on what you currently have, and your workflow needs a big change. Or maybe when you should be working on a fundamental problem and letting your escalations pile up while you solve for a root cause. Basically, any situation where your understanding of the problem brings you to a different conclusion than the generally accepted plan maybe that your stakeholders have in their heads. So to solve for this, we had to kind of unpack all of what we knew about the product and what it took to make our customers successful and tie that back to what our company's core mission was. So it definitely wasn't enough for us to say, we need to invest more before we move on, or the product isn't done. That kind of thing can always be countered by an argument that something is done enough. So instead, we sort of created this holistic argument with the same data set we talked about in the last lesson. We added in the customer quotes that we've been gathering along the way through that research. We had snippets from the product itself. And so for us, that was screenshots of conversations that our bot was having. And we tied that back to what was effectively a first principle of our product team. And we said, if we believe that living up to this principle is fundamental and necessary for us to achieve our strategy, then we can't do anything but work on this problem. So we took our feelings out of it, really, and we built an argument and a story around all of these different data sources, and then repeating that story just over and over and over again. And then the other thing we did is we named it. So instead of saying we're just going to work on the user experience, we had a catchphrase that we used to describe the batch of work we needed to do to create that user experience. So again, just building up conviction in our stakeholders. And so the lesson was that it's just not enough to know something yourself as a PM or a product lead. You have to be able to create or to convince the people around you to believe in that as well. And your story, your evidence, your conviction all have to be stronger than the pull of whatever other new thing is out there. And saying the same thing but louder or more aggressively isn't going to work. You have to iterate on your story, get more evidence as you go. And it's going to take data analysis skills, presentation skills, communication skills, the ability to make trade-offs and describe the potential downstream impacts of those trade-offs in a way that someone who is less familiar with the space can understand. And honestly, it'll take the guts to make a call and to stand up for that choice in the face of what will always be some kind of pushback. And importantly, as you do this kind of work, you also have to be willing and prepared for your feelings to turn out to be wrong. As you're gathering that evidence and building that argument, you have to make sure that you're not cherry picking the facts that support your feelings, but instead you're really validating your ideas. And assuming that you get that story and that evidence right, you also have to be prepared for and willing to accept responsibility for the fact that the bet you make may not work. Because at the end of the day, there's not going to be any certainty, and it's still going to be a bet, even if you've built up all this conviction. So for this one, questions to ask yourself to figure out if your narrative or your understanding is not clear or bought into by your team would be things like, do you disagree with what you're being told to do, or the reaction or feedback you're getting on your plans? Are you frustrated? Does it feel like you've explained the same thing 100 times and someone, maybe your boss, still doesn't really get it? Or are you getting asked just the same question over and over again, despite feeling like you've answered those questions? And if the answers to any of this are yes, you're probably in a place where you need to take a step back and see if you could construct a better argument and story around your plan. And the tool I would use to do this is to map out all the different scenarios that were on the table. So you can lay out all of the evidence you have and show which scenarios or scenarios that evidence might support, and then show what the potential maybe cost and impact is of each scenario. And if we're able to do that, plus weave what your best idea is into some kind of story that hits not just on those specifics, but also on why they matter for the people you're talking to, you're probably going to have a much easier time, getting to the yes that you want. And I have to mention that if this feels sort of ambiguous and unfinished, that's good. Because I think if you have a list of features that you're working on, that gives you a level of clarity that I just don't think is realistic when you're operating in a world where you're trying to create value and impact. Those things are hard to figure out. And it's really hard to know when you're doing the right thing, when you step out of assuming that just building what you have on your list is going to work. So over the course of these 3 lessons, we've learned your user experience, starts way before your users get into your app. So treat that like an extension of your product. We talked about how you always have to pair data with customer input and to never stop using your own product. And third, personal conviction is just useless unless you can convince the people around you to agree with your plan. But really, what I learned over the course of working on this product is that having what people typically refer to as hard skills, so like a background in computer science or data science or coding or whatever, none of those skills were actually going to help me in any of these situations I was in. Instead, those were really all technical skills that people on the team probably applied in the different situations we were in. And what I really have learned is that the truly hard skill that sets apart great product managers and teams is knowing how and when to apply the right skill set to each situation that they're in. So that means flexing between and combining all of the skills and tools a PM needs to figure out what the real problems or opportunities are, to figure out which one's worth betting on or betting your team's time on, and then figuring out how to convince everyone around you to make that bet with you. That's the actual hard skill, because you don't get promoted or advance in your career or build a great product or business because you did the best math or because your roadmap was perfectly communicated and formatted, or because you were the best at estimating your OKRs, or because your team shipped the most story points, or because you managed to ship all of the things that your executive team thought was cool. None of that matters, even if people are telling you that it does. What matters is whether you can create results consistently for your users and your business. And the way that you're going to be able to do that is by figuring out what to do in each situation that you're in as quickly as possible, and using frameworks and tools is what's going to get you there. So hopefully you remember the 3 lessons. I hope you can add 1 or 2 things into your toolkit that you're building up of your skill sets. And I hope you learned at least one thing today that was helpful to you. So thanks so much and good luck out there.
Thank you, Maggie and Meg, and to all of those who have joined us today. Did you enjoy this as much as I did? Please connect with our speakers in our follow-up interactive sessions later today. Check the agenda for more details. Coming up next to the stage, bringing your vision to life. We want your feedback. See the in-app agenda to review sessions and talks. All docs, slides, and resources will be available in the 2021 Women in Product app at the close of the day. Thank you again for joining us, and please be sure to come back for our next session on the stage, bringing your vision to life.